Welcome, Reckless Wanderers. This is Robert again, and we just came out of the Harvest announcement, and we also had some other really great updates, like the beta for the Vulkan renderer, which incidentally renders my last video pretty much obsolete. So yes, the performance problems that I spoke of in my last video, they are completely gone with Vulkan. PoE feels like a completely new game to me, and it's amazing. I'm actually pushing now in the last week of Delirium to get some more stuff done. That's not what you're seeing here in the background. This is actually a standard character that I just respec into being an Arctic breath, damage over time, low life witch. And this low life witch has a Quicksilver flask and 4 health flask. Why? Because I wanted to prove a point and talk about one more aspect that I hope we'll see an improvement in the future, and this is flasks. Flasks in PoE are something very special. They always have been, because you have this aspect of, or the concept of, them being items that you can roll with different properties. So not only have you your standard life and mana flasks, which are already pretty cool if you can roll them with Dispel Freeze and Dispel Poison or more armor during flask effect. But no, you also have utility flasks like the Quicksilver or the Granite or Sulfite flask that have various properties that, if you enhance them with the crafted properties, get even better. And then obviously there's also tons and tons of unique flasks that have amazing properties that just enhance the way of you play a character, because it's essentially like having another layer of skills and effects that you can apply. This is cool and all, but one thing that is really annoying is the fact that basically you play Flask Piano all the time, and if you're not doing something stupid that I'm doing here with basically having no flask for your character, you're trying to have 100% flask uptime. So you pick the strongest flasks for your character, you start a map, you start to kill the first pack of monsters, you hit all of your flasks, and then you try to keep up the flasks when you go pack to pack. And you also use your flasks during the boss encounter, and basically you try to kill the boss because your flasks fall off. That is insanely powerful. It's insanely great what combinations you can pull off, but it's also insanely annoying. And there is the popsicle stick meme, and there are people that are either wanting to play around with a flask macro or already using a flask macro, even though it is against terms of service. So why is this a problem? Well, if we go back to the very beginning, I'm going to play a couple of YouTube videos, and I'm going to link all of the YouTube videos in the description, so credit to the YouTubers. This is how basically it started. This is a Build of the Week video from the very first season of Build of the Week. And this is showcasing the Melee Witch. And the Melee Witch has 3 life flasks and 2 granite flasks. And it needed that because it was a hardcore character. This was endgame, by the way. This was Merciless Fields. This was the highest area that you could go to in the game back then. And one thing that you notice is that the gameplay is very different to what it is today. You need, like, I don't know, 20 minutes to kill this area. It's not very engaging, it's not very fun, it's not very nice, but at this pace, having 3 life flasks and like 2 utility flasks makes a lot of sense, because you actually hit them occasionally, which isn't happening here in this demo, but that's how you would play back then. So that makes sense for that era, and it's also a very nice change of pace from how flasks were implemented in different games. If we remember back in Diablo 2, you basically had your entire inventory full of flasks, and you could queue them. You could queue anti-poison flasks, you could queue stamina flasks, you could drink 10 of them, and you had enough stamina for the next like 5 minutes, and then you just have to make sure that you have your health pots and mana pots in your belt so you can press them, and after you press them and after your belt is empty, you have to refresh them. Arguably, that's very tedious, very cumbersome, and we can all agree that Path of Exile's flask system is much smarter than this. Because here, again, you have to press but still, you always press 1 or 2 buttons. You don't press all 5. Let's move along a little bit later to a game that I played after it came out, very long, Sacred, super old game, not very nice. This one had a slightly similar flask system as Diablo had, but they also introduced situational utility flasks that had over time duration, and you would basically press them whenever you encounter undead. If you kill undead, they would rise again, but if you have the flask effect of the undead flask up, then the undead would basically stay dead. Again, very situational. You would, in Sacred, you would actually not like have all 5 flasks all the time, and it's also tedious because this is similar to Diablo. You have this inventory full of flasks, and then you have to refresh them all the time. Moving on to yet a later stage, Titan Quest, which is the predecessor of Grim Dawn, went back to basically only having life and mana flasks. There were other utility flasks that you could use to dispel poison, or you could actually throw bombs or something, but if you look at endgame builds, they weren't actually used. It was actually going back in what was possible before, and a much simpler version. As a benefit of that, you had a much larger skill bar, so you could put 8 skills instead of just 4, and you had basically just 2 buttons to press for healing and for resource recovery, so mana. So Grim Dawn captured that as well, and if you look at any endgame Grim Dawn build, you will see that there's basically still the life potion, and there's maybe an oil or another potion that you would use, but you wouldn't really see more than 2 at any point in time. Again, you use them to recover health and to recover your resource. Not as Path of Exile does it, to give you temporary buffs. Diablo 3, we don't have to talk about that. There is basically only the health pot. So there's that. Wolcen, same thing. They went in a route where you could customize your flasks, so you could change what flasks you want to run, and they have different effects. But again, it's only 2 slots. So you have 2 buttons that you press, and again, they are situational. You don't have them up all the time. And if we go to Diablo 4, it's basically... I'm not sure if we should even mention this, because this is probably going to change, but again, they just have 1 health pot. And yeah... So what do they all have in what's all differentiating those to a PoE? Well, in PoE, again, you, instead of pressing 1 or 2 buttons situationally, you are compelled to press 5 buttons every 3 seconds, or use a popsicle stick or whatever. And in addition to that, we now also have many more buttons on our skill bar. When PoE was in its early stages, there was a main skill that we used for clearing, there was a single target skill, and there was a movement skill. You basically only had like 3 buttons to press. Now, thankfully, this has changed quite a lot. We have a lot more options. So we actually have debuffs, we have I don't know. I can only think of debuffs, but we have the movement skill, we have the debuff, we have our clearing skill, which is mostly also our single target nowadays. Like if you play a summoner, you have like tons of buttons to press. So as long as you're not automating stuff all around, there is things to do that you have on your action bar. You have your Vaal skills, and on top of that, you also have your flasks that you are supposed to press every 3 seconds, because if you're not doing that, you're not playing efficiently. But it just hurts fingers. It's like, for me, it's just annoying. It's ignore the fact that I just switched to single target here and got killed. It's annoying because it puts another layer of stress, at least onto myself, and I don't find it very enjoyable to be compelled to chain my flask charges from pack to pack. And oftentimes I find I have much more fun if I just don't use the flasks in their intended way. but actually use them situational. And that's why I had this weird test on this low life witch, which only has health pots, which are completely useless. The only thing that they're doing is they're dispelling bleed, freeze, poison, and burns. That's all they do. And then I have a Quicksilver because sometimes I actually do want to move a little bit faster. And it's very different. It plays very different. Yes, everything is slower. Everything takes longer to die. But I'm playing much more relaxed, and I still have fun, and it feels a little bit more tactical, because if I actually get a nasty burn, I know which button to press to dispel the burn. And I can imagine if you use something like this, then flasks would get some of their original flavor back, because especially the more recently added utility flasks are doing an amazing job with that. Like popping a quartz flask when you know there's going to be a bigger hit, or popping a quartz flask when you're surrounded and you want to phase through the mobs. That actually does feel amazing. And I wish we had some way of bringing that back. But then again, with 5 flask slots, it feels like with 5 flask slots, and how many do we have? We have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 action skills. We have a little bit too many buttons to press. And I realized that as well after playing shooter for a while. So in this case, for example, Borderlands. And in Borderlands, I mean, you constantly have your fingers on WASD, but other than that, you are not pushing too many buttons. You have the reload button, you have the button for your action skill, you have a grenade button, you have a button to crouch, and you have a button to sprint. That's 5 buttons in total, together with your left and right click, which you're using for shooting and for aiming. And that feels very, very comfortable. You have your fingers always on WASD, and you have 5 other actions that you are using situationally. So you reload when your clip is empty. You use your action skill when you want to use your action skill. You crouch when you want to cover. You're not doing like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's just mindless. And yeah, just feels a lot better and more natural. So the question is now for PoE, how can we retain the cool feature that flasks provide with their items, and there are lots of unique flasks. There's cool utility flasks, and there's also effects. And that's also why flasks are important at the moment, and that's maybe questionable. Right now they're used to dispel effects. You want to dispel freeze, you want to dispel poison or whatever. That's why you roll flasks, unless you are very rich and you can be immune to ailments in some other ways. But what if, for example, ailment immunity or ailment avoidance was available in some other way? What, for example, if your elemental resistances, the more you overcap them, the more there's maybe a chance to avoid certain ailments or something. Then this would remove the stress from flasks, and you could use flasks again for their utility purpose. And then again, what if, for example, flask effects wouldn't stack? So you could have maybe 5 flasks, but if you the duration of or the effect of a flask would end as soon as you pop another one. So you pop a Quicksilver, you run fast, but then as soon as you pop your Quartz Flask, the Quicksilver effect ends, and the Quartz Flask effect overrides the Quicksilver Flask. That would be kind of interesting. Or, yeah, maybe just remove the amount of flasks that you have, remove it from, or reduce it from 5 to a lower amount. That's also something I know we shouldn't tailor towards console players specifically, but it's especially something that you stumble upon as a problem when you play PoE on a controller. There's just not enough buttons that you can support 5 flasks. So maybe having 4, 3, or even just 2, like many other games have, would be enough. And then there would be you would have to have a different choice of what flasks to actually use, which flasks benefit your build best, and yeah. And then basically just have to think about what to do with dispelling ailments, but I'm pretty sure there's more compelling ways to do that than flasks. I don't know what the solution to this is. I just know for me it's a problem to do the piano thing all the time. And yeah, I wonder what your thoughts on that are. If you've experienced the same problem, or if I'm just if I'm just weird, that might also just be. Let me know in the comments below. And yeah, Vulkan is awesome. Looking forward to Harvest. Probably going to play this this Arctic Breath Occultist, or maybe some melee stuff. I don't know. I don't know yet. Gonna wait for the patch notes and then see what's up. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.